I kind of seen this coming. Because here's the thing, right? With wokeness, right? You know the term that people who are actually woke are like, oh, but what does it mean? What does it mean? And it's like, well, you know, like they know what it means. You know what it means. You know that they know what it means. They know that you know what it means. But they have to play this odd gaslighting stance where it's like, well, what does woke mean? And it's like, well, and it's something that I try to ponder. It's like, what does it mean to go woke? And at the end of the day, it's going against consumer interests, right? It's doing everything in your power to go against the fans and the people who legitimately partake in the IP, the activity, the game, the movie. Is looking at what they want and looking at that demographic in the market and being like, okay, let's do the exact opposite of that. And if they don't like it, we call them a racist. It's like, we're going to call them a name and then move on. It's like, well, congratulations. And then the people move to anime. But now we see that, at least and when we talked about the whole translator or localizer argument, or the whole localizer ordeal happening in most Japanese companies, where they're supposed to really just change the translation to whatever other language, but unfortunately some of them are adding social justice proverbs into the fucking game that serves no purpose whatsoever. Like, they take they make one situation, something that's supposed to be one situation in Japanese, and they change it to mean something completely different. And I've already been over that, but from Japan to the world, how to translate a game. Behind the global success of Japanese video games lies a delicate task, appealing to overseas players whose expectations on issues such as sexism are increasingly influencing the content of major titles. With a majority of sales for big games now outside Japan, everything from slang words to character costumes must carefully be considered for a global audience. It is a complex process that has come a long way since the Wild West of the 1980s and 90s. What does any of this have to do with making games now? I don't, they have to look towards the past to justify making terrible fucking decisions today. It's like, we already know that adding things like these don't really affect, like, they not only does they not do they not help, like, people actively move away from these concepts, because things that, like, there are things in art that is supposed to offend, like, that's the point. Like, say there is, I don't know, a sexist trope, like, maybe the point is to be sexist, and I think some of these things should exist. Like, things like these should exist, because unfortunately, like, things such as sexism happen in the real world, and since media is sort of a portrayal of culture in a sense, like, these things are allowed to exist according to the high profit localization team. Again, we're back on the fucking localizer idea of changing the original thing to mean something completely different. And again, at the end of the day, that's really the problem, right? They believe, the localizers, and by the localizers I mean it varies from Japanese company to company. Like, some of them are like just proofreaders, right? They just proofread and be like, oh, this isn't allowed, this isn't allowed, this is allowed. And there's a conflict of interest because they have to justify their paycheck right? They have to justify the job that most people would kill for. Literally sit there and localize anime that they are interested in to whatever language they need to. And then there's the argument of, oh, well, Japanese is just hard. It's just hard. But it's like, okay, maybe. I mean, their language is different from ours. No fucking duh. But the problem isn't really that. It's the difficulty, right? It's not like if it was a skill issue, just hire a better localizer. No, the problem is they legitimately the localizers do everything in their power to push their own social justice message, their own ideology into the anime where it's just not needed. And if anything, it hampers and is a disservice to the anime. Like, that's the problem. There were no rules, no industry standards, and the quality of localization could vary greatly from one title to the next. Could vary greatly from one title to the next. Says the SAG of America team who worked on Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, the latest title in the hit Yakuza series releasing on Friday. And I mean, again, right? Okay, maybe there were no rules and no industry standards, but the market still had the say, right? You know, in the 1980s and 90s, these things were actually selling. Like, people were actually interested. Nowadays, you know, at least in the Western industry, like entertainment industry, these things are not selling. And in fact, they're firing people because of that. Which is I mean, that's one of the issues, but I think that's the biggest issue. The fact that the market is moving away from these ideas because they don't benefit the consumer. I mean, I guess they benefit, like, the journalist. Like, the journalist sees. It's like having being a Christian, having the crucifix on. It's assurance, right? Companies look at these things as assurance. Like, they're very social justice when it comes to how they look, but very cutthroat and capitalistic when it comes to making money. Back then, translators faced constraints, including too small text box, and sometimes game developers did the job themselves in less than perfect English. This also meant that many games from the era, especially dialogue-heavy ones, never made it out of Japan. Thankfully, the industry and perhaps more importantly, the consumer have changed a lot since those days, and we are now able to more faithful be more faithful to the cultural and emotional content of Japanese games than ever. The SCGA's team says the Sega team said, I mean, this is just a whole lot of nothing. Like, I don't understand this idea that, oh, well, in the past it was like this and that's unacceptable, but today we're even more enlightened. We're the most enlightened of the Christians and of the evangelicals. I mean, what? I mean, oh, we're the most enlightened of the woke and of the localizers. It's very odd that that every time they believe they can do better than what they've come before. And again, the localizers, they didn't build the company, right? They didn't build, you know, the anime or the manga. They're just translating, but they genuinely believe they know better than the angry old Japanese man who has to work for a living, right? Who is not happy. They're not. They look at us filthy gaijin and they're like, buy our fucking games because we're gonna put out a fucking game that you want to fucking play, or put out a fucking anime that you want to fucking see. Buy it, peace. And they go back to work, to sleeping in their fucking office, right? And you see these guys in the Game Awards, and they have like what? They have a suit on over their fucking t-shirt. They have the baggy ass pants on, right? Because they work for a fucking living. Unlike the localizers, who have a cushy fucking job but believe that they're better than the angry Japanese man who works 20 hours a day. It just boggles my fucking mind. Like, I'm sorry, no, you do not. You are not better than these people. And it is self evident because they're outselling most Western entertainment companies, right? Like, it is self evident. The consumers are moving to these projects. Well, but the localizers, they have to reach their tentacles into these things and change things around. And they can add absolutely nothing to the art. If anything, take away from the art piece. And it's just like, people are seeing this. People see these things. And then like Asmongold seeing these things. But they go after Asmongold because they're scared. Like, oh, a popular streamer dares to talk against the hegemony of the localizer. How dare he? How dare he? Localization is now integral to the design process with international games in mind from the start. One key example is how Japanese game developers dress their heroines. As the Me Too movement, oh my god, are they about to pull that? As the hashtag Me Too movement changes mindset, says Finnick Genti, senior localization manager at Japanese game giant Bandai Namco. Okay, oh my fucking god, I'm about to fucking have an aneurysm. So because a bunch of weird, rich, fucking goofy ass liberal Americans cannot help themselves but to grope women. Like, they cannot help themselves. They can't, like, you look at these. Like, you look at the people who are in the Me Too movement. They all agreed with that. They would agree with everything the social justice say. They would agree with everything. They're Democrats. They're like, you rarely. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but you rarely have a right winger, for lack of a better term, a conservative, ever get fucking blasted with this. Like, with the Me Too, it was predominantly the same thinking people that are in Hollywood today, right? That believe in all the social justice things, all the Democratic things. They believe that they have the fist of Black Lives Matter because these people could not help themselves but to grope fucking women. Japan, halfway across the fucking world, needs to change their art style, their anime, their artistic value to fit Western sensibilities. Like, I need you to understand, this is the fucking argument they're throwing at us. And you hear these things, right? You hear this, and you just cannot comprehend how anyone can make this connection. But they do. They can't help themselves to make these connections. One key example is how Japanese game developers, I've already fucking read that, we tell them that the cleavage is a bit too exposed or that the skirt is a bit too short. Again, the evangelical Christians have reached their way into these companies, but they're not Christians. They're not evangelicals. They agree with the same fucking things, but they are the complete opposite spectrum of the political spectrum, right? Like, they look at these things, they're like, oh no, we can't have this, because, again, our fucking politicians and our fucking actors can't help but to grope women. You, the Japanese man that works 20 fucking hours a day, you need to change your shit. Just because our people can't help that. It's just so fucking stupid. Like, and again, it's difficult to put this in I struggle to put this in the word. But this is exactly what they mean. Right? Before they weren't very flexible. Because the market doesn't fucking care. Like, and I got laughed at on Twitter for saying this for some fucking reason. People are talking about, oh, how Miss Marvel, she's a strong, independent woman who blah, 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 doesn't need no man. I'm like, okay, The actual market cares more for Mrs. Marvel's tit size than they do the fact that she's strong, independent woman. And I get fucking blasted. And I'm like, okay, again, if you only care about the social justice aspect, if you care nothing about the Marvel movies, I can see why you're getting mad at me, right? But this is how the normal people think. This is how the normal market thinks, right? Like, there are things they care about, and there's things that they just don't care about, like, at all. Like, that doesn't drive the story or anything. The reason people care is because you drive them to care. Like, you train people to care about these things. Then when they see these things, they see, oh, so why is Wonder Woman covered all the way the fuck up? Like, when, the whole point of Wonder Woman was she could wear whatever the fuck she wants, and this was back when the Christians were censoring. Like, they pulled out the ruler to look at the skirt sizes of the characters. Like, you had the character like Wonder Woman who wore revealing but not like lewd or pornographic things. And the idea was, oh, well, she can wear whatever the fuck she wants, fuck off. And she's still powerful regardless. And nowadays, she's covered the back, like, she's covered the fuck back up. It's like, oh god, oh, they got a hold of her again, oh. Puck-Man, what? The puzzle of game localization affected the 1980 arcade sensation Pac-Man, with the direct translation Puck-Man, deemed too risky because it could be vandalized. Some top-selling games, including Mario, Final Fantasy, and Pokemon, involve fantasy worlds that are not overtly Japanese, offering some flexibility in their adaptation. I mean, again, these things are marketed to Westerners. Like, believe it or not, Westerners are these things' greatest sellers. They're their consumers, right? Anime isn't as popular in Japan as it is in America, believe it or not. And it's the same thing with Japanese games. They're not as popular in Japan as you think. But the task becomes trickier for series such as Yakuza, which are set in real life locations and use slang from Japanese underworlds. Getting it right Getting it right is important. Around 70% of revenue from recent titles in the Yakuza series come from overseas. See, exactly. Like Westerners. And again, and just because it's Westerners, it's not the Westerners who care about the skirt size or the cleavage size. It's people that just want to play a good game. You know? It might be hard to understand, but Western entertainment is falling to the wayside. It's like companies are doing everything in their power to fail, to shit on their customer. And anime and Japanese and hell, even Chinese games and movies and South Korean games are the remedy. But they're trying to change that. Like, they're trying to put these restrictions on them too. Like the whole war on anime, war on the fucking pixelated men, I call it. It's ridiculous. People know that ramen is now, we don't need to say noodles anymore, Genty said. And again, no one cares about this. His team at European headquarters of Bandai Namco has adapted games including the Tekken Fighting series and the smash hit role-playing game Elden Ring into a dozen languages. The job is as much a cultural challenge as a linguistic one. No, it is not, says Pierre Frocket, localization project manager at Bandai. The player, whichever company they're from, should understand and feel the same thing as someone playing in the original language, he says. But that's not what localizers are doing. They're injecting their own Western cancer into the localization. And again, people in America see these things and it's like, okay, this isn't Japanese. This isn't authentic. This is Western hegemony, Western entertainment hegemony being shoved into a fucking anime game or an anime or a manga. Like, people see these things, right? But again, some may see it and be incapable of articulating what they see, right? But Asmongold isn't. Like, he sees these things clearly and clearly point these things out. And people, and obviously the localizers attacked him because they can't help themselves. Like, they know they're being called out here. And it's like they're flipping the fuck out because, oh, people are pointing them out that they're just liars. Like, they're supposed to be translating the actual thing, but they don't. They just change the thing because they believe they know better than Japanese man. And Asmongold point these things out and is now getting attacked and quote unquote canceled. I don't think they'll ever cancel him because he doesn't need to care. Like, he makes Twitch money, right? They're not just gonna slap him down just because of an opinion he has. How hard they try. No longer acceptable. What? My fucking god. Better pepper my ass. Oh. A better understanding of Japanese culture amongst players means adaptation can be more subtle. The Yakuza series is now called Like a Dragon, closer to the original Japanese LGBTQ caricatures and sexist cliches have also been axed. You see what I mean? They're changing the original, right? It's like LGBTQ caricatures. Who determines that, right? And sexist cliches. Like, who determines these things? Like, who determines if an LGBTQ person is a caricature or a sexist cliches? Like, what if they're funny, right? I think sexist cliches are fine if they're hilarious. If it's all in good fun. And I know a couple LGBTQ persons who see people who see caricatures and are fine with it. Because, I mean, it's all in good fun, all in good taste. But I guess if you're a social justice activist, you're forced to see LGBTQ caricatures and be like, no. Like, you're forced to see sexist cliches because your ideology demands that you get pissed off. Many representations which were normal in Japan in the first Like a Dragon game are no longer acceptable today, says Masayoshi Yokoyama, the series executive producer. We asked our team in the United States and Europe to read the game script, and they tell us if they see anything that wouldn't be acceptable in their country. Changes often focus on alcohol, politics, or religion, Froggatt added, while cultural references points also differ. When there are people dressed in black boots and big leathered coats in Europe, that could bring to mind a Nazi uniform, he says. Again, I don't but like, this is probably something he was told. It was like, yeah, no, we should take that into consideration. It's like, no, you don't. Now, again, these are people who are forced by their ideology to find problems and things. The thing isn't how it's sexist or how it's transphobic, right? Or it's not if it's sexist or transphobic, it's how. They're forced to find these things by their ideology. And there's an incentive to do this, right? Because in this case, they get jobs as localizers. So the incentive to find these things is the fucking paycheck. If there's nothing then why are they even hired? With global releases dates now the norm, these decisions must be made under tighter deadlines than before, and despite improved communication between developers and localization teams, the challenges remain, especially when translating a game into a language other than English. Effort has been made to understand the needs of the English speaking world, Frogge says. But for German, which has longer sentences, and other linguistic quirks, localization is sometimes seen as an extra difficulty by design teams. Even so, Frogge believes in his mission to create connections to Japanese culture and help Europeans discover its depths while respecting both the game and the players. But again, these localizers do everything in their power to disrespect. Like, they believe they are the link between God and the fucking game. They believe they know better than the consumer, the people buying the thing. And the thing is, if the previous Yakuza sold with the LGBT caricatures and the sexist uh, cliches, why take them away? Like, people see these things are taken away, and you say you've taken these things away. What makes you think people care to play the fucking game at this point? There done better be fucking comments here. I'm about to throw some hands. Of course. There are no comments. Right. Right. Can I... Do I need a... Do I need a sign? I'm gonna be that first fucking commenter. So where do I? Where do I? Where do I want to comment. I want to comment. It's not letting me comment. It's not letting me comment. Well, I wanted to be that one guy, but it's not letting me. Like, again, they must have Alzheimer's, because they forget that I am him, and it's not anyway. Again, it takes a while for shit like this to hit Japan, like any Western thing to hit Japan. But I think people should call this out as it is, right? It's a conflict of interest. It's people who do not care for the games, do not care for the art, but they're making a paycheck to find problems. I think people should call it out. People should shit on it at any point they see it, right? Because, again, as the consumer, right, you have the power to look at these things and be like, no, I don't support these things. I don't support Western hegemony putting its tendrils into the things I like, right? And, I mean, that's all I gotta say about this. Peace.